Hello and welcome to Buying into the Future, where we discuss all things public procurement. Today, we'll be looking into the issue of sustainability in public procurement. The demand for procurers to include greener terms for goods and services into their calls has risen over recent years. However, there has been a certain reluctance to do so due to the fact that in many cases, contracting authorities aren't sure what to include in their specifications or how to validate that what is offered is actually more sustainable. The EU Ecolabel has come to help solve this particular uncertainty. And to help us understand a little more about the background to its creation, and more importantly, what it is, who should get one, and how, we have two guests with us today who we're sure are going to be able to shed some light on the matter. And I'd like to ask them to introduce themselves now. And if you don't mind, we'll start with ladies first, please. Martina.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. My name is Martina Ferrara and I work for Punto 3, an environmental consultancy in Italy. As Punto 3, we support both private companies in obtaining EU Ecolabel certification or other Type 1 ecolabels, as well as public bodies in complying with green public procurement.
Thank you very much. And over to you, the gentleman of the podcast.
Many thanks, Steve, for inviting me for these podcasts in this very interesting subject. My name is Ivan Azevedo. I'm a policy officer in B1 in DG Environment of the European Commission. My unit deals with sustainable materials and bioeconomy. I joined the Commission in 2022 to work in green public procurement.
So two experts on the issue at hand today, and we are very, very grateful for your time and the information that you will be able to share with us. Ivan, if I could start with you just as a little bit of background to this whole issue, because I like to always put it in some kind of context. As I mentioned in the introduction, there has been a drive in recent years for more sustainability to be included in public procurement. And I was wondering how much of an issue actually is this, and who is the driving force behind it?
Well, you are absolutely right, Steve. Green public procurement is becoming very important across Europe. Member states realize that what they buy has a big impact on the environment. Public buyers spend millions of euros every year. So if they choose greener products and services, it can help reduce pollution, fight climate change, and support circular economy goals. So GPP, so Green Public Procurement, GPP is a clear political objective endorsed by EU governments. Since 2008, in multiple Council conclusions, Member States have called for greener public spending and encouraged the use of common GPP criteria. More recent Council conclusions or declarations, particularly those of 2020 and 2022, confirm that procurement should actively support the European Green Deal, circular economy, and sustainability objectives in general, positioning GPP as a strategic driver for environmental policy implementation. You asked me also, where is the drive towards green public procurement coming from? Well, the push for green public procurement mainly comes from these political decisions. Political leaders are asking for these. And we also have now laws and policies such as the Green Deal, the Circular Economy Action Plan, and more recently, the Union has adopted legislation containing GPP provisions, making GPP mandatory. I give you a few examples: the Eco Design for Sustainable Product Regulation, the Construction Product Regulation, the Net Zero Industry Act, the Batteries Regulation, or the Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation. But there are other drivers, for instance, climate targets. Member states have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030, and GPP can help a lot on this. And of course, there is pressure from citizens. Citizens are asking governments to green everything. Well, lastly, not so much, maybe, but there are pressure from the citizens. And there is another very important driver, which is companies. So the private sector, very often, they ask member states and the Commission to green their procurement and to recognize their efforts to green their services and their products. So green public procurement is not just nice to have anymore. It is becoming a strategic tool to reach environmental and also social and other goals.
Thank you very much for that. That's been a very useful background. And there are, in fact, many, many forces at work, as you quite rightly say. And I should imagine the pressure will remain. We have been talking about sustainability in public procurement. Because I like defining terms, what actually do we mean when we say sustainability in public procurement? What makes good or a service sustainable?
Well, sustainability is a big word, encompasses a lot of meanings. From a green perspective, sustainability means to procure goods, services, and works with a reduced environmental impact throughout their life cycle when compared to other goods, services, and works with the same primary function that would otherwise be procured. This is actually the definition we have, the official definition we use in the Commission. So it is not to procure, actually GPP is not to procure to look for the best, the perfect solution, but is to compare options one might have and to go for the best possible option.
When we're looking at things like sustainability, that of course, as you mentioned, it's quite a wide area and there's so many elements to sustainability. And that seems to me to be something that's very difficult to juggle. For example, if you're looking at sustainability, which is the most important sustainability? I was reading recently something about, for example, the production of hydrogen fuel. So if you wanted a fleet of cars with hydrogen fuel, hydrogen to produce is actually very low in terms of carbon footprint, but very high in terms of water consumption. So when a public buyer is looking at sustainability, how do they or can they balance their priorities? And is there any help for them to be able to do that? Your thoughts, Ivan, if you could.
Well, green public procurement is about, as I said, it's not about looking for the silver bullet. Things don't need to be perfect, but public buyers do need to make their best efforts to attain a good compromise. So the aim is not to procure the most sustainable in absolute terms, but rather the more sustainable possible. And trade-offs might occur also because there is no universally accepted impact hierarchy. So it's not that carbon footprint has a priority over water. It depends a lot also on the region where the public buyer is established. It might happen that water is critical and not so much emissions to the air. And science, like life cycle assessments and environmental footprint methods, they can help to identify hotspots and key environmental impacts, but these must be complemented by other considerations. When developing GPP voluntary criteria, the Commission already takes into account possible trade-offs, but at the end of the day, it will be for public buyers to adapt those recommended criteria to the local reality. But there are other tools also. So there are GPP criteria that are predefined, there are sectoral guidance, and there are ecolabels that help a lot in public procurement. In the future, there will be also digital tools like the product environmental passports under the eco-design regulation. This will help a lot public procurers.
So we've mentioned quite a few times now GPP. I wonder, Ivan, if you wouldn't mind explaining a little bit more about what they are and how they help. And then I'd like to come to Martina to talk a little bit maybe about the application of those in practice. But Ivan, if I could start with you, please.
Yes, well, GPP is a process. I guess you were asking about the predefined criteria, which are quite important in GPP, because when public buyers want to procure sustainable goods, services, and works, they must answer the question, what are the options that allow me to procure with a reduced environmental impact? And this is quite resource consuming for public buyers because of the technical background necessary to evaluate the possible options. And it is here that predefined GPP enter to help public buyers because they answer that question on what is more sustainable, releasing public buyers from making the sustainability assessments by themselves. Public buyers can trust the GPP criteria recommended by the Commission because they were developed on data from evidence-based, on existing ecolabel criteria, and on information collected from stakeholders of industry, civil society, and member states. And the evidence base uses available scientific information and data, adopts a life cycle approach, and engages stakeholders who meet to discuss issues and develop consensus. These predefined GPP criteria are also important to avoid distortions of the single market. So criteria are also of a particular benefit to companies operating in one or more member state, as well as for SMEs, because they can predict what public buyers will require. The Commission has been developing GPP criteria for a long time now, I think since 2008, and there are GPP criteria for 20 product categories. And the priority sectors for implementing GPP were selected throughout a multi-criteria analysis, including scope for environmental improvement, public expenditure, political impact on suppliers, etc. They are divided. Normally, the criteria that Commission recommend are divided in two. There are the core criteria that are those more suitable for use by any contracting authority across the member states and address key environmental impacts. These criteria are designed to be used with minimum additional verification efforts or costs. And then we have the comprehensive criteria that are for those public buyers who wish to purchase the best environmental products available on the market. These might require additional verification efforts or a slight increase in cost compared to the products with the same functionality. So in a nutshell, these are the predefined criteria.
Okay, thank you. And Martina, you also, from the work that you've been doing, have some practical knowledge, some practical experience of the predefined criteria.
So the EU Directive 2014 was transposed in Italy with the Public Contracts Code. In this code, although not obliged to do so, Italy has chosen to make mandatory the inclusion of sustainability criteria at the moment for 21 categories of purchase. This has given a strong boost to the spread of Type 1 ecolabels in relevant markets such as cleaning and construction, textiles and paper, partly because the public procurement code in Italy allows Type 1 ecolabels to be used as the sole means of compliance with the established sustainability criteria. For example, a public body in Italy can only purchase tissue paper or hand detergents or surface cleaners if they have a Type 1 certification. But the most significant case in Italy is about EU Ecolabel certification for cleaning services. And this is recognized by Italian law as an added value for public tenders, encouraging cleaning companies to obtain the certification in order to improve their performances in this market that accounts for the 14% of gross domestic product in Europe. It's particular because in September 2025, there were 217 cleaning services licenses in Italy, compared to 268 across Europe. So the 81% of all the licenses in Europe are in Italy, actually.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, and this is just a very quick follow-up. If someone doesn't know where to find those things, you mentioned, is there somewhere that people can go to actually find those tools? Are they on a site somewhere?
Yes, they can look in the website of the Commission. There are tools, namely tools on LCA, on life cycle assessment. There are also tools on environmental footprint. And several member states have their own tools. So it's just a matter for public buyers to look or in the Commission website or on national websites. They will find these tools.
Great. Thank you for that. Coming down to something of the nitty-gritty, and I'd like to bring Martina in here. if I could. Martina, in your experience, because you provide consultancy both to the public and private sector, and obviously one of the major concerns, apart from environmental concerns, is the issue of cost. In your experience, how difficult is it? How complex might it be for procurers to balance this issue of sustainability versus cost?
Yeah, we often think that environmentally friendly products are more expensive than traditional ones. This may or may not be true. I mean, nowadays there is a wide range of sustainable products available, especially for certain items such as detergents, and which are available in various price ranges. As part of Punto 3 consulting services, we carried out a comparative analysis using life cycle assessment and life cycle costs methodologies of the cleaning services provided by Loperosa. There is a facility management company who promoted this study and also is the second company in Europe to have obtained the EU Ecolabel license for cleaning services. And this study analyzed through targeted sampling and monitoring 3 cleaning protocols. The first one was a traditional cleaning protocol, so business as usual. And the second one was called EU Ecolabel base. It was compliant with EU Ecolabel certification with 14 points. That is the minimum for obtaining the certification. And a third protocol that was called EU Ecolabel top, so was compliant with the certification with 30 points. And the analysis showed that the EU Ecolabel top protocol not only reduces environmental impact, but also the costs associated with providing the service. Mainly, this was linked to the fact that using concentrated cleaning products allows for very small quantities of product to be used. So even though the product may appear more expensive, much less of it is used. So you can have savings also with sustainable products.
Okay. So there's something that maybe didn't look obvious actually turned out to be the better choice, which again is part of the complexity of this whole issue. Yes, Ivan, you'd like to come in.
Yes, exactly. Well, I agree with Martina, but I would like to add also that the difficulty actually lays in thinking strategically. So everything is possible. It's just a matter of thinking strategically. Even when the budget is limited, it's often possible to think in a strategic way and search for less costly options. For example, if I have few money, instead of buying new, I maybe can buy refurbished products or reused products and lower my spending. This is also a possibility, and it helps a lot the environment. It helps our pocket and it helps the environment. So it's a win-win situation.
And strategy looking long term in terms of things like possibly modularity, that things can be changed, adapted as they move forward, I guess would help. So part of this, it seems to be what you and Martina are saying is, A, you've got to look around, but B, you've also, as you've just said, even you've got to look ahead. You've got to think about what this might mean in a few years' time, and as well as what your options are. Thank you very much for that useful point there as well. Let's turn now, if we can, to the actual EU Ecolabel, because this has been mentioned a few times. We've talked about things like the GPP, et cetera, So I'd like to get a little specific now on the label if we can. And this, of course, will go to both of you. If you could, what do we mean by EU Ecolabel? What is the use of labeling things in terms of public procurement? And then we'll look a little bit about the process. But let's just establish, if we could, what it is first of all. What is the EU Ecolabel? What purpose does it serve? What does it mean? What is their value?
Existing product labels are divided into mandatory and voluntary. So in the case of mandatory labeling, companies are obliged to provide information and be assessed on specific environmental characteristic of the product. So like an example is energy labels on household appliances. While in the case of voluntary eco-labeling schemes, companies can decide whether or not to obtain a particular eco-label. The EU Ecolabel is a voluntary Ecolabel. And there are 3 types of voluntary ecolabels, and they are divided into type 1, that is a voluntary multi-criteria ecolabel program assessed by an independent third party who consider the life cycle impact of a product. And this type of label indicates overall environmental preferability of a product within a product category. The type 2 is a self-declared claim made by manufacturers or retailers without a third-party auditing, while the type 3, it's an environmental product declaration on the life cycle impact, but instead of assessing or weighting the environmental performance of a product, this type of label only shows the objective data, facilitating product comparison by buyers. So public procurement legislation allows institutions to make explicit reference to the main eco-labeling schemes in public tender procedures, but as labels can be used to verify compliance with one or more tender requirement. So, but also can be used as a bonus criterion. This is the case of the EU Ecolabel cleaning services that Italian tenders are required as a bonus criterion, but use this certification also as a tool that supports the verification of compliance with service sustainability criteria. Because the Ecolabel certified cleaning service guarantees the use of chemicals with reduced environmental impact that are also safe for operators, and the use of microfiber and the use of dosing system. But above all, it guarantees also that staff are trained or a wide range of aspects, including the ecolabel itself.
Thank you very much for that. So following on from that, obviously you have this EU labeling system there now, which I'm presuming is of use to the public authority or whatever who's looking to acquire services or products. But it's something that the supplier would have to acquire. So if I'm a supplier and I'm interested in taking part in tenders, etc., which have a sustainability element to them, how do I go about certifying my particular product or service so that I can have that recognized in any kind of procurement procedure that I wish to participate in?
Yeah, the license may be requested by a producer, a manufacturer, or an importer, or a retailer, a wholesaler, so from a lot of people. And first of all, you need to check that the product or service that you want to certify falls within a product group for which criteria exist, obviously. Then, of course, you need to check that all the mandatory criteria are met. And once you have verified compliance and collected all the supporting documents required for the certification, you can submit your application to the competent body in your country. In addition to the documentation, you must also pre-register with the European catalogue of EU Ecolabel certified products and obviously pay for the application fees. And then the competent body will verify the documentation and carry out an audit at the production facility. And then, if the outcome is positive, issue the license. And from that moment onwards, you can use the label in accordance with the logo guidelines. And time and cost may vary between countries and also depending on the type of application. For example, if it's a new license or a renewal or an extension.
That was going to be my quick kind of follow-up question there. These labels, how often do they need renewing? Do they are they for a number of years? How does that work?
The license has the same expiration days of the criteria. That is usually 5 years from the publication of the criteria. If the expiration of a criteria is extended, then also the expiration of the license is extended as the same day of the criteria.
Okay, well, thank you both very much for that interesting information, which I hope will provide useful thank you very much for your time today and for joining us in this episode. For our listeners, please do keep checking the playlist as we are adding new podcasts as and when we can. But for now, I'd like to thank our guests here today and you, the listener, for joining us on yet another podcast. And we hope you will join us again soon. Goodbye.